I was reading the paper when my daughter arrived. It was a Tuesday. The crossword was half finished on the kitchen table. A pot of tea steamed gently beside it. Eleanor let herself in with her key. She always did. She placed a reusable shopping bag on the counter. It was full of groceries I hadn't asked for. "Mom," she said. She kissed my cheek. Her perfume was crisp. "I was at the market. I thought I'd save you the trip." I looked at the bag. There was kale. I don't care for kale. There was also almond milk. "I drink whole milk." I said nothing. It was a kind gesture. She was being helpful. I am 74. Help is a natural currency between mothers and daughters. Or so I told myself. "The forecast is for ice later," Eleanor said. She began unpacking. "I don't want you slipping. I've moved your doctor's appointment to Thursday." "I'll drive you." I had looked forward to the drive. I enjoy my little car. It's a 2010 sedan. It smells of peppermints and old books. But she was right. The roads could be bad. It was easier to agree. "Thank you, dear," I said. That was how it began. Not with a shout. Not with a demand. It began with kale and a rescheduled appointment. It began with the quiet hum of efficiency. My life, my very quiet life, began to be managed. Eleanor is my only child. Her father, Arthur, died 8 years ago. She is a financial planner. She is excellent with details. She lives 40 minutes away in a newer, larger house. Her husband, David, is a silent man who smiles with his mouth but not his eyes. They have no children. I think Eleanor views projects the way other women might have viewed babies. I became a project. The following week, she suggested consolidating my accounts. "It's a nightmare for estate planning, Mom," she said. "All these different banks. Let me help you simplify." It made sense. Arthur had handled the money. After he died, I left things where they were. It was comforting. It felt like he had just arranged it. But Eleanor painted a picture of chaos. Overdue forms. Inefficient interest rates. The risk of forgotten passwords. I gave her the files. I watched her neat, precise hands sort through decades of statements. Her fingernails were perfectly shaped. They never chipped. She opened a new account at her own bank. She linked everything to a single online portal. She set up the login. "I'll be the secondary on the account," she said, "just for emergencies. In case you ever get locked out." It seemed prudent. She was my daughter. Who else would I trust? Then came the house. It's a modest Cape Cod. We bought it in 1975. The paint is fading. The front walk has a slight buckle. Eleanor started pointing things out. "That railing is loose, Mom. It's a liability. If someone falls, you could be sued. The roof is at least 20 years old. A major leak could ruin everything inside. These old windows are bleeding heat. Your utility bills are astronomical." She brought a contractor friend, Mark, to walk through with her. I made tea. I listened to them talk in low, serious tones in the living room. They spoke of load-bearing walls, of code violations, of deferred maintenance. The phrase made my home sound like a negligent child. "A full renovation is the only smart play, Grace," Mark said. He called me by my first name. He was younger than Eleanor. "But it's a big project. Stressful. Maybe you should consider a nice senior community. Eleanor could handle the sale. Free you up." I looked at Eleanor. Her expression was one of concerned neutrality. She was just exploring options. "For my benefit. I'm not ready to sell," I said. My voice was softer than I intended. "Of course not, Mom," Eleanor said quickly. She shot Mark a look. "We're just assessing, but the repairs are real. We need a plan." The plan, it turned out, involved a home equity line of credit. "Leverage the asset to protect the asset," Eleanor explained. She filled out the application. She said my handwriting was too shaky for the bank's standards. She needed my signature, of course. I signed where she placed the sticky notes. The line of credit was approved. It was a surprisingly large amount. Eleanor said it was 4. Scope creep. Construction always revealed more problems. She and Mark would manage the contractors. To spare me the hassle. No work ever began. When I asked, the story changed. The permits were delayed. The materials were on backorder. It was the wrong season. The money, however, began to move. I saw it on the monthly statements. Electronic transfers I didn't recognize. Payments to MDS Design LLC. Large withdrawals at ATMs. When I asked Eleanor, she sighed. It was a patient sigh. Mom, that's Mark's company. For the design plans and project management. The cash is for small, upfront purchases. It's how contractors work. You have to trust the process. She patted my hand. Don't worry about the details. That's why I'm here. I began to feel like a guest in my own life. My routines were gently corrected. My grocery choices were optimized. For my health, my book club meetings were often on nights Eleanor scheduled. Family dinners. I would miss them. My friends called less. I think Eleanor answered my phone sometimes. She would tell them I was napping or feeling under the weather. The first true betrayal was quiet. It was about my granddaughter. My brother's granddaughter, really. My great-niece, Lily. Lily was getting married. She was the closest thing I had to a grandchild. She had spent summers with me as a girl. She sent me thoughtful letters. She invited me to her wedding in Vermont. I was thrilled. I bought a new dress, a soft lavender. A week before the wedding, Eleanor sat me down. She looked grave. Mom, I've been looking at the travel. It's a 4-hour drive. The hotel is on a steep hill. The venue has gravel paths. It's a fall hazard nightmare. I insisted I could manage. I was healthy. I walked every day. It's not just the trip, she said, her voice lowering. Lily called me. She's worried. She loves you, but she's concerned about you having an episode. With your heart. I stared at her. My heart is fine. Dr. Evans said it's strong. Eleanor's face was a mask of compassionate pain. Mom, Dr. Evans talked to me after your last visit. About the arrhythmia. Remember? The flutter you described. I had felt a palpitation. Once. Months ago. It was stress, the doctor said. Nothing concerning. It's a liability for Lily, Eleanor whispered. If something happened at her wedding, the distraction, the ambulance, she's trying to start her life. She asked as a favor if you might understand. She didn't have the heart to tell you herself. The room felt very still. I thought of Lily's bright face. I could not imagine her saying such a thing. But Eleanor presented it as a painful secret. A burden she was bravely carrying for both of us. I have the invitation, I said weakly. I know, Eleanor said. She took my hand. But sometimes for the people we love, we make quiet sacrifices. Let's send a magnificent gift. I'll write a lovely note from you. I did not go to the wedding. I watched the clock that Saturday. I imagined the ceremony. I felt a hollow ache. I sent a check for $500. Eleanor mailed it. I later learned, through a stray comment from my sister, that Lily had been hurt I didn't come. She had saved me a seat. She thought I'd fallen ill. When I mentioned this to Eleanor, she looked puzzled. Then concerned. Oh, Mom, she said. You're misremembering. Lily told you about the seating issue. The venue overbooked. We discussed it. She said it with such gentle certainty. I began to doubt my own memory. Had I confused things? My memory had been reliable. But under the soft, constant pressure of her corrections, it began to feel less solid. The financial questions became more frequent. I would notice a discrepancy. A missing dividend deposit. A larger than usual transfer to MDS Design. Each time, Eleanor would explain. Taxes. Fees. A necessary purchase. Her explanations were always logical, and delivered with a faint, tired smile. The smile of a competent adult humoring a confused parent. I keep the statements in the filing cabinet, I said once. I know, Mom, she said. I filed the last one for you. Remember? I didn't remember. But I couldn't be sure. She started coming with me to doctor's appointments. She would speak for me. She's been a little more forgetful, doctor. Or, she mentioned dizziness last Tuesday, didn't you, Mom? I would murmur something. The doctor would nod, his attention on Eleanor. Her competence was a wall. I was behind it, fading. The idea of a family meeting was introduced. It was just me, Eleanor, and David. We sat in my living room. David barely spoke. Eleanor laid out her case. It was about planning for security. Mom's independence is so important, she said. She was speaking to David, but about me. But we have to be realistic. The house needs work she can't manage. The finances are getting complex. I think it's time to formalize my role. For her protection, she presented papers. A durable power of attorney. A healthcare proxy. They were blank, waiting for my signature. This just lets me help you more seamlessly, Mom, she said. Her pen was poised. If you ever can't make a decision, I can step in. It's a safety net. I looked at the documents. The words swam. I'd like my lawyer to see these, I said. My voice was a dry leaf. Eleanor's smile tightened. Mr. Peterson? Mom, he's semi-retired. He hasn't kept up with elder law. This is standard. Every family does this. I'd still feel better, I said. It was the first firm thing I'd said in months. A flicker passed behind her eyes. It was there and gone. Annoyance. Then it was smoothed over by concern. Of course, she said. She gathered the papers. If it gives you peace of mind. But it's an extra expense. And really, it's just a formality. She left the documents with me. Look them over. We'll talk next week. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table. The same table where I'd been doing the crossword when this started. I felt a strange, cold clarity. It was not anger. It was not even hurt. It was recognition. I was being erased. Not with malice, but with method. My money, my home, my decisions, my memories were being sanded down. Repackaged as burdens she was nobly bearing. My resistance was framed as confusion. My questions as ingratitude. I saw the end of the path. It led to a nice, small room in a facility. My house would be sold. My accounts would be empty. And Eleanor would be the devoted daughter who had done everything so difficult. She would sigh at the tragedy of my decline. No one would question it. I made a decision. I would not fight her. Not directly. A direct fight would look like the confusion she described. I would become the difficult parent. It would only speed up the process. Instead, I would become the world's most diligent secretary. The next morning, I went to an office supply store. I bought a simple, locked filing box. I bought a notebook with numbered pages. I bought a new email address from a library computer. I began to document everything. I started with the past. I found old statements. I photographed every page. I went to the town hall and got copies of my property deed. My tax records. I found Arthur's will. I scanned it all. I sent the files to my new email. I documented the present. I recorded the mileage on my car before and after Eleanor borrowed it. I saved every grocery receipt, even the ones for the kale. I wrote down the date, time, and summary of every conversation with Eleanor. Just the facts. What was said? What was promised? When she mentioned a contractor's invoice, I would say, "That's good to know. Could you email me a copy for my files? I'm trying to stay organized." My tone was light, help-seeking. Sometimes she would send it. Sometimes she would forget. I noted that too. I found the statements for the Helic account, the one where she was a secondary user. I saw the pattern clearly now. Regular transfers to MDS Design. ATM withdrawals always on days she visited. I printed them. I highlighted the transactions. I needed a professional, but not my old lawyer. Eleanor was right about him. He was a friend. He would call her. That would be the end. I needed a stranger. A specialist. I searched online at the library. I looked for elder law attorneys. I looked for ones who mentioned financial exploitation and undue influence. I made a list. I called the top 3 from a payphone. I settled on a woman named Mara Thorne. Her voice on the phone was calm, unhurried. I told her I needed a consultation regarding estate planning. I said I might be facing a family dispute. I did not say it was my daughter. Not yet. Her office was downtown. I drove myself. It felt like a rebellion. Mara Thorne was in her 50s. She had steady eyes and a quiet demeanor. She did not patronize me. She listened. For an hour, I laid it out. Not emotionally. I presented it as a case. I showed her my notebook, the documented conversations, the financial records, the unbegun renovation, the wedding I missed. She looked over the Helic statements. She saw the transfers to MDS Design. "Do you know what this company is?" she asked. "My daughter's contractor friend," I said. Mara did a quick business registration search on her computer. Her mouth became a thin line. "The registered agent for MDS Design LLC is David S. Ellis," she said. She looked at me. "David is your son-in-law?" I felt the room tilt slightly. David. Silent, smiling David. It was his company. Eleanor and David were paying themselves with my money. For work that never happened. The scope creep was their own profit. "Yes," I said. My voice was distant. Mara leaned forward. "Grace, what you've described and what this suggests is a potential pattern of financial exploitation and attempted undue influence. The POA documents are a major red flag. Your meticulous notes are invaluable." She explained the process. It would not be fast. It would be procedural. We would need to freeze the financial situation first. We would need to formally revoke any existing powers of attorney, which, thankfully, I had never signed. We would need to send a cease and desist letter to Eleanor and David, to demand an accounting of all funds. Then, if the funds were not returned, we would move to civil litigation. We might also refer it to the county's Adult Protective Services for investigation. "It will be stressful," Mara said. "They will likely retaliate. They may accuse you of incapacity. They may try for guardianship." "I understand," I said. The clarity was holding. It felt like armor. "Why now?" Mara asked gently. "What changed?" I thought of the wedding. The lavender dress still hanging in my closet. The hollow Saturday. The manufactured lie that cost me a moment I could never get back. "She stole my seat at the table," I said. "I want it back." We began. Mara helped me secure my assets. We changed the passwords on all my accounts. We removed Eleanor's name from the bank account. We froze the Helic. I signed a new durable power of attorney and healthcare proxy, naming Mara as my attorney-in-fact, not my daughter. It was a temporary, protective measure. Then Mara sent the letters, certified mail, to Eleanor's home and to David's office. The storm arrived 2 days later. Eleanor didn't call. She came over. She didn't use her key. She pounded on the door. I saw her through the window. Her face was a distortion of the calm daughter I knew. I opened the door. I did not invite her in. "What is this, Mom?" she hissed. She waved the letter. "What have you done? Who is this lawyer? Are you out of your mind?" "I am protecting my assets, Eleanor," I said. My voice was steady. "You and David have 30 days to provide a full accounting and to return the misappropriated funds." Her eyes widened. "Misappropriated? We are managing your life. You can't manage it yourself. Look at this place. Look at you. You're confused. That lawyer is exploiting you. The documentation is clear," I said. 30 days. She stared at me. I saw the calculation in her eyes. The rage. The shock that her quiet project had developed a will of its own. "You'll regret this," she said. Her voice was low and cold. "You are not competent. I will prove it. I will have you declared incapacitated. You will end up in a home. And I will be in control." It was the first truly honest thing she'd said to me in a year. There was no kindness left. No pretense of care. Just the raw desire for control. "Do what you feel you must," I said. I closed the door. I locked it. I listened to her car screech away. Her retaliation was swift. She filed a petition for guardianship. She claimed I was suffering from severe cognitive decline, that I was a danger to myself financially, that I was being manipulated by a predatory lawyer. The court process was slow. It was paperwork. Evaluations. It was the opposite of dramatic. I was evaluated by a court-appointed geriatric psychiatrist. Dr. Lorne spent 3 hours with me. We talked. He gave me tests. I told him my story. I showed him my notebook, my filing box. He asked about the kale. He asked about the wedding. He asked about my daily routines. He asked me to interpret a fable. I did. His report stated I had mild, age-appropriate memory changes. It found I had a clear and rational understanding of my financial and personal situation. It noted my meticulous documentation of events was evidence of planning capacity, not impairment. It concluded there was no basis for a finding of incapacity, and that the petition appeared to be motivated by familial conflict, possibly related to financial interests. Eleanor's petition was dismissed, but the civil case continued. Mara filed the lawsuit. It was for financial exploitation, breach of fiduciary duty, and unjust enrichment. The discovery process was tedious. It was requests for documents, depositions. I was deposed. Eleanor's lawyer asked me hostile questions. He tried to make me seem confused. I answered slowly. I referred to my notes. I was polite. I did not rise to the bait. Eleanor and David were deposed. Mara told me about it. They claimed everything was done with my permission. For my benefit. They claimed I was forgetful, that I approved things and then forgot. But they had no documentation, no signed approvals for the transfers, no detailed invoices from MDS Design for the phantom renovation, just vague references to project management. Their story was built on my supposed incompetence. But the evidence, my evidence, showed a consistent pattern of observation and record-keeping. It showed competency. The weeks turned to months. The legal back and forth was a grind. It cost money. My money. But it was a cost of reclaiming what was left. The settlement offer came on a rainy Thursday. Mara called. "They want to settle," she said. "They will return 80% of the quantifiable funds taken from the Helic. A lump sum. They will sign a quitclaim deed, relinquishing any potential interest in the house. They will agree to a permanent no-contact order, except for communication through attorneys. In exchange, we drop the lawsuit and agree to confidentiality." "What is the quantifiable amount?" I asked. Mara told me. It was a number that made my breath catch. It was more than I had imagined. It represented years of their quiet siphoning. "Do they admit wrongdoing?" I asked. "No," Mara said. "It's a standard no-fault settlement. But the return of funds is a de facto admission, and the no-contact order is significant." I looked out at my rain-streaked window, at the buckled walk, at the fading paint. This was my home. It was shabby. It was mine. "Accept it," I said. The money was wired into a new account, one only Mara and I could access. The deed was filed. The legal case closed. There was no dramatic confrontation, no final meeting. Eleanor did not call. She did not write. She simply ceased to exist in my world. The silence she left behind was immense. It was not peaceful. It was the silence of a cleared field after a fire. I used part of the returned money to make real repairs. I hired a local contractor I vetted myself. We fixed the railing. We repainted. We did not renovate. We restored. I reconnected with my brother. With Lily. I explained in simple terms that there had been a family disagreement over money. That it was resolved. I did not vilify Eleanor. I said we were estranged. Lily hugged me. She cried. She said she had never asked me to miss her wedding. She had been so hurt. We had tea. It was awkward. Then it was not. The days are quiet now. Quieter than before. I do the crossword. I drive my car. I see my friends. The fear of a knock on the door, of Eleanor's key in the lock, has faded. It is a dull echo. Sometimes I look at the chair where she sat that first Tuesday, with her bag of groceries. I think about the path from there to here. It was not paved with evil intentions. I believe that. It was paved with a sense of entitlement, with a belief that my life was a problem to be solved. My humanity was an inconvenience to her narrative of efficient care. The justice was procedural. It was in the psychiatrist's report, in the judge's dismissal, in the settlement figures. It was quiet. It left no room for gloating, only for a slow, steady reclamation. I have my life back. It is smaller. It is marked by absence. But it is authentically mine. The control is mine. The mistakes, if I make them, will be my own. I often wonder about the last conversation. The one at the door. Her threat. Her cold eyes. Was that the real daughter? Or was the kind one real? I think they both were. The kindness was a tool. The cruelty was the truth when the tool failed. I have one question that lingers in the quiet of the house. It is not a question of blame, or of what I lost. It is a simpler, colder question. If I had never started writing things down, would I even remember who I was supposed to be? I sat with that question for a long time. It was autumn again. A year had passed since the settlement. The leaves on the maple in the front yard were a brilliant red. I watched them from my kitchen window. My house felt solid around me. The new paint was a creamy white. The repaired railing was stout and plain. I had thought the legal end was the finish line. I was wrong. It was only the end of the public story. The private story continued. It was a story of aftermath, of learning to live in the silence I had won. The first thing I did was a practical purge. I changed the locks. It was a symbolic act. A locksmith came, a cheerful man who whistled. He installed sturdy deadbolts. He handed me 5 new keys. They felt heavy. Their teeth were sharp and new. I put one on my ring. I placed the others in a drawer. There was no one else to give them to. I went room by room. I removed traces of Eleanor's curation. I gave the kale-colored throw pillows to a charity shop. I put my own china, the pattern she called dated, back in the cabinet. I took down the generic art prints she had bought for my updated look. I rehung my watercolor of the Maine coast. Arthur had bought it for our 30th anniversary. Each act was small. Each felt like reclaiming a square inch of territory. My finances were now managed by a professional fiduciary Mara recommended. A bland, thorough man named Robert. He came quarterly. We reviewed statements. He paid my bills. He asked no personal questions. He was a circuit breaker. A layer between me and anyone who might ever try to control my money again. It cost a fee. It was worth every penny for the solitude it bought. Friends were cautiously curious. They had seen Eleanor's constant presence. Then her abrupt absence. I offered a minimal explanation. We had a falling out over financial matters. It's sad, but it's for the best. Most accepted this. A few pressed. I learned to say, I'd rather not discuss it, with a finality that closed the subject. My sister, Margaret, was the exception. She knew more. She had seen Lily's hurt. She had heard the whispers from Eleanor before the silence fell. She came for a weekend in November. We sat by the fireplace. She asked me directly, Grace, did she really try to take everything? I nodded. She was methodical about it. She and David. Margaret's face hardened. She was older than me. She had never warmed to Eleanor. She was always a cold child. Even as a little girl. She calculated. I remember her trading dessert for extra reading time. Not eating it, just hoarding the advantage. I had forgotten that. The memory was a shock. A piece of a puzzle I hadn't known was missing. It wasn't that she became this person. This person had always been there. The circumstances had simply given her a new canvas. What will you do? Margaret asked. Live, I said. Simply live. Living, however, required vigilance. The fear did not vanish with the court order. It mutated. It became a low-grade awareness. A habit of verification. I checked my credit report every quarter. I monitored my bank accounts online every week. I kept my filing box updated. The notebook was still active. Now it logged ordinary things. Meter readings. Dinner dates. But the habit of documentation was ingrained. It was my armor. I doubted I would ever take it off. I received a letter from an attorney 6 months after the settlement. It was not from Eleanor. It was from David's lawyer. A separate matter. They were divorcing. The letter was a formal notice. It stated that as part of the divorce proceeding, David was disclosing the settlement with me. He was claiming the returned funds as a marital asset. He was arguing Eleanor had misappropriated the money without his full knowledge. He was trying to shield half of it from the divorce settlement. He wanted my testimony, or at least my affidavit. I showed it to Mara. You have no obligation, she said. The no-contact order is with both of them. This is a request. You can ignore it. I thought about it. David's silent complicity. His company, MDS Design, as the funnel. His bland smiles at my kitchen table. What happens if I don't respond? I asked. His argument weakens considerably, Mara said. Without your confirmation of the facts, it's his word against Eleanor's. In a divorce, that usually means the asset gets split down the middle anyway. I felt no loyalty to David. I felt no desire to help him. But I also felt no desire to help Eleanor by remaining silent. Their mutual destruction was their own business. Yet the facts were the facts. I had spent a year proving them. I will provide an affidavit, I said. Strictly factual. Only what is already in the court record from our case. No opinions. No emotions. Mara drafted it. It was a dry, 2-page document. It stated when the Helic was opened. It listed the transfers to MDS Design LLC. It noted the business registration. It confirmed the settlement amount and its return. It was a clinical recitation of theft. I signed it. I had it notarized. It was sent. I later heard, through the faint grapevine of family law that Mara occasionally mentioned, that the divorce was acrimonious. The judge, considering my affidavit and the other evidence, ultimately ruled that the returned funds were to be considered Eleanor's separate property. A penalty for her misconduct. David did not get half. He got nothing from it. I felt nothing when I heard. No schadenfreude. It was just another procedural outcome. A consequence, logged and filed. The seasons turned. Winter came. I took up knitting again. Something I hadn't done since Arthur was alive. The rhythmic click of the needles was soothing. I made a scarf for Lily. A deep blue. She visited in the spring. She brought her husband, Ben. A quiet young man with a good handshake. We had lunch in my garden. The conversation was light. Gardening. Books. Their plans. They were thinking of buying a house. As they were leaving, Lily hugged me tightly. She whispered, "I'm so glad you're you again, Aunt Grace." Her words stayed with me. You again. It implied I had been gone. I had been. I had been slowly replaced by a version of myself that was manageable. A version that needed kale and feared gravel paths. A version that was a liability. Becoming me again was a daily practice. It was choosing whole milk. It was driving to the market in the rain just because I wanted to. It was leaving a light on all night if I pleased. It was small rebellions against the ghost of efficiency that still sometimes whispered in my ear. I started volunteering. Not at a big organization. At the local library. One afternoon a week. I helped reshelve books. I enjoyed the quiet order of the stacks. The head librarian, a woman named Chloe, asked if I'd be interested in leading a memoir writing group for seniors. I hesitated. Then I agreed. The group was 6 of us. We met in a sunlit corner of the community room. We wrote about small things. A first job. A childhood pet. A lost recipe. We shared what we wished. No pressure. I did not write about Eleanor. I wrote about Arthur. I wrote about the summer we rented a cabin on a lake. I wrote about learning to sail a sunfish. I wrote about the smell of pine and coffee in the morning. Putting those memories on paper fixed them. It made them real in a new way. It was a different kind of documentation. Not for defense. For preservation. One afternoon after the group, Chloe asked to speak with me. She looked uneasy. "Grace, a woman came in last week," she said. She was asking about the volunteer schedule. She specifically asked if you still worked here on Tuesdays. She said she was your daughter. The air left my lungs. It felt cold. "What did you tell her?" I asked. My voice was calm. My hands were not. "I said I couldn't discuss volunteer schedules for privacy reasons," Chloe said. She was persistent. Very polite, but persistent. "She left a book for you at the front desk. I didn't know if I should give it to you." "A book?" Chloe went to her office. She returned with a small, wrapped parcel. Brown paper. No note on the outside. I took it. I thanked Chloe. I told her my daughter and I were estranged. I asked that if she returned, Chloe should simply say I was no longer volunteering. Chloe nodded, her eyes full of unasked questions. I took the parcel home. I placed it on the kitchen table. I made a pot of tea. I sat and looked at it. It was a violation. A subtle one. A probe at the boundaries of the no-contact order. She hadn't called. She hadn't written. She had left a book at a place she knew I frequented. It was a message. It said, "I know where you are. I know what you do." After an hour, I opened it. It was a copy of The Giving Tree. A children's book. Inside the front cover, In Eleanor's precise handwriting, it said, "To Mother, remember who gives and who takes. All my love, E." I felt a surge of nausea. The sheer audacity of the reinterpretation. In her mind, she was the tree, the selfless giver. I was the boy, the endless taker. She had rewritten our story in 4 lines. I did not throw the book away. I placed it in my filing box. It was evidence, a potential breach of the no-contact order. I scanned the inscription and emailed it to Mara. Mara's response was swift. She sent a formal letter to Eleanor's attorney. It stated that any further contact, direct or indirect, would result in a motion for contempt. The cost of such a motion would be sought from Eleanor personally. There was no response, no apology, no more books. The incident, however, shook the quiet I had built. It reminded me that her narrative was still running parallel to mine. In her story, she was wronged. She was the martyr. I was the ungrateful, confused mother led astray by a greedy lawyer. I could not control her story. I could only live mine. That summer, I decided to travel. A small thing, a tour of New England gardens. It was a group tour for seniors. I would be gone for 10 days. Robert, my fiduciary, set up a travel account for me. He prepaid the tour. He arranged for a neighbor's son to collect my mail and water the plants. The trip was beautiful. The gardens were lush and ordered. I enjoyed the company of strangers. There was no history. We talked about roses and hydrangeas. We shared photos of grandchildren. I showed them a picture of Lily. I said, my niece. It was easier. On the 5th day, my phone rang. It was my neighbor, Jean. "Grace, I'm so sorry to bother you," she said. Her voice was tense. "There was an incident at your house. My boy, Sam, he saw a woman in your backyard yesterday. He thought it was you back early. He called out, but she hurried around the side of the house and drove away. He got the make and model. A silver SUV. He didn't get the plate. A silver SUV. Eleanor's car. Did he call the police?" I asked. My heart was a drum. He called me. I went over. Nothing seemed disturbed. The doors were locked. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to alarm you. I thanked her. I told her to call the police if she saw anything else. I hung up. The serene beauty of the garden I stood and felt like a painted backdrop. The real world was back home, with a silver SUV circling my empty house. I called Mara. She advised calling the local police non-emergency line. To file a report. To create a paper trail. I did. A polite officer took the information. He said they would add a drive-by note to the patrol log. He said without a license plate or proof of trespass, it was limited. But, he said, it's good you're documenting it. If it escalates, you have a starting point. I finished the tour. I went through the motions. The joy was gone. I was looking over my shoulder, listening for a car engine. When I returned home, everything was as I left it. The locks were intact. The alarm system I had installed after the settlement was undisturbed. I walked through every room. I felt like a stranger. The safety of the place had been punctured. I increased the security. I installed motion sensor lights on the sides of the house. I put up a small, discreet sign by the front door. Protected by security system. It was probably meaningless, but it made me feel slightly better. The psychological weight was the hardest. The legal battle had been a war of attrition. This was a guerrilla campaign. A book. A sighting. It was meant to keep me off balance. To remind me she was there. In the shadows. I refused to be chased from my home. But I also refused to be naive. I began varying my routines. I went to the market on different days. I took different walking routes. I told my close circle, Margaret, Lily, Jean the neighbor, that if they could not reach me for 48 hours, to call the police for a welfare check. It was a sad set of precautions, but necessary. A year and a half after the settlement, I received a formal letter from a trust company. It was regarding the estate of my late brother-in-law, Eleanor's uncle on her father's side. He had passed away. He had no children. His will, it stated, left a small bequest to me, a collection of first-edition novels and a sum of money. It was to be distributed directly to me. It bypassed any heirs of my body, as the legal language put it. Eleanor was not mentioned. This, I realized, was the next potential flashpoint, an inheritance that came to me, not through her. It was a direct line of family connection that excluded her. It was a provocation, though not by my design. Mara reviewed the documents. It was straightforward. I accepted the bequest. The books were lovely. I donated them to the library in the uncle's memory. The money I placed in a CD. It would be a gift for Lily's future children someday. I waited for the reaction. It did not come as I expected. It came through an official channel. A notice from the state's Department of Social Services. They were initiating a review. They had received an anonymous complaint. The complaint alleged that an elderly woman at my address was living in squalor. That she was a hoarder. That she was refusing necessary medical care. That she was being financially exploited by a lawyer. The caseworker who visited was a young woman named Sarah. She was professional. She had kind eyes. She showed me her badge. She explained the process. I invited her in. I offered tea. She looked around my clean, tidy, repaired living room. She saw the flowers on the table, the organized bookshelves, the absence of clutter. "May I see the kitchen and bathroom?" she asked gently. I showed her. They were clean. The refrigerator had fresh food. The bathroom had grab bars by the tub I had installed for my own comfort. She asked about my medical care. I gave her Dr. Evans's contact information. I signed a release so she could confirm my appointments and sound medical status. She asked about my finances. I introduced her to Robert, my fiduciary, on a speakerphone call. He confirmed his role. He offered to provide statements to the department. The visit lasted an hour. At the end, Sarah smiled a small, apologetic smile. "Ms. Ellsworth, your home is lovely. It's clear you are well cared for. By yourself and your professionals. These anonymous complaints, they happen. Sometimes from disgruntled family. We have to check. I'll be closing this as unfounded." "Thank you," I said. "Do you know who might have made the complaint?" she asked. "I have a suspicion," I said. "But no proof." She nodded. "Well, if there's any further contact that feels harassing, you can report it. To us or to the police. Keep building your paper trail." After she left, I sat down. I wasn't angry. I was tired. The relentlessness of it was what wore you down. It was 1,000 small cuts. A book. A car. A false report. The goal was not to win in a grand gesture. The goal was to exhaust. To make me so tired that I might one day say, "Fine. Take it. Just leave me alone." But I had come too far for that. I documented the DSS visit. I filed the caseworker's card. I added it to the chronology in my notebook. Then I did something I had not done before. I initiated a proactive legal move. I asked Mara to petition the court for a permanent restraining order. Based on the pattern, the book, the trespassing citing, the fraudulent DSS report. We had the evidence. The affidavit from the neighbor's son. The scanned book inscription. The DSS closure letter. The hearing was a quiet affair. Eleanor's attorney argued there was no direct threat, that the incidents were coincidental or misconstrued. The judge, a weary-looking man, reviewed the file. He looked at the timeline, the settlement, the no-contact order, the subsequent events. "This is a pattern of boundary testing," he said, his voice flat. "It stops today." He granted the restraining order for a period of 3 years. It prohibited any contact, direct or indirect. It prohibited coming within 500 feet of my home, my car, or my known locations like the library. Any violation would be an arrestable offense. We were sent the official documents. Mara had them served by a process server. This time, there was no pounding on the door. No angry call. Just absolute, final silence. The silence now was different. It was secured by the power of the state. It had teeth. It was not just my word against hers. It was a court order. The psychological relief was profound. The constant, low-grade vigilance began to ease. I slept through the night. I enjoyed my walks without mapping escape routes in my mind. Life became genuinely ordinary. The drama was over. The aftermath of the aftermath was just life. I turned 76. I had a small party. Margaret, Lily, and Ben, a few friends from my writing group. We ate cake. I felt surrounded. Not managed. Not monitored. Just accompanied. I continued to write. My stories moved from memoir to simple observations. The way the light fell on the hall floor at 4 p.m. The sound of the furnace clicking on. The stubborn robin that returned to the same branch each spring. I was documenting a peaceful present. One afternoon, I was in the library. I saw a notice on the bulletin board. A local family law firm was sponsoring a free seminar. The topic was elder law, protecting your autonomy. The description mentioned powers of attorney, guardianship, and recognizing financial exploitation. I looked at it for a long time. Then I took a flyer. I went home. I called the number on the flyer. I asked to speak to the attorney giving the talk. Her name was Linda. I told her I had lived through a case. I asked if she would like a personal perspective for her seminar. Not names, just experience. She was intrigued. We met for coffee. I told her my story in broad strokes. The gradual control, the financial takeover, the legal fight, the aftermath of harassment. I emphasized the quiet beginning, the helpful daughter with the groceries. I emphasized the importance of the notebook, the mundane documentation. They count on you not keeping records, I said. They count on your trust, then your doubt, then your shame. The paperwork is your shield. Linda asked if she could share anonymized elements of my story in her talk. I agreed. I attended the seminar. I sat in the back. She spoke to a room of about 30 people. Mostly older adults, some with middle-aged children. She gave the legal definitions. She talked about red flags. Then she said, "I'd like to share a story with you." It comes from a client I'll call Anna. And she told my story. She talked about the crossword puzzle, the kale, the missed wedding, the notebook, the locked filing box. I watched the faces in the room. I saw nods of recognition. I saw fear. I saw dawning understanding. When Linda finished, there was a heavy silence. Then questions poured forth. Afterward, a woman with kind, tired eyes approached me. She had guessed, perhaps from my expression. "Are you Anna?" she whispered. I smiled slightly. "It's not important who I am. What's important is what you heard." She took my hand. "Thank you," she said. Her grip was firm. "My son, he started managing my pills for me. He says I double dose. I don't think I do. Get a pill organizer with a timer," I said quietly. "Keep the log yourself." She nodded, her eyes bright. She walked away, standing a little straighter. That was my quiet revenge. Not against Eleanor. Against the silence that lets these things happen. Turning my experience into a warning for others. It gave the whole painful journey a purpose beyond my own survival. The seasons continued their turn. I am writing this now in the early evening. My house is quiet. The security light has just flicked on in the side yard, triggered probably by a cat. I am not alarmed. I am observant. I have everything I need. My home. My sanity. My modest, secure finances. The love of the family that remains. The respect of a few good professionals. The quiet camaraderie of my writing group. I have lost a daughter. I grieved for her long before the legal battle. I grieved for the daughter I thought I had. The one who was a fiction. The real one is a stranger living her life, bound by a court order to stay away from mine. I hope she finds peace far from me. The justice was not sweet. It was austere. It was factual. It left no one cheering. It simply restored a balance that had been tilted. I am old. I know this. But I am not done. I am living my life, one documented, ordinary day at a time. The story is not about betrayal anymore. It is about what comes after. It is about the quiet, stubborn act of reclaiming a self. I look at the crossword on the table. It is complete. The tea is cool in the cup. All that is left is one question, the one that drifts in with the twilight. It is not about the past. It is about the nature of the cure. When the treatment for the disease is so meticulous, so all-consuming, how do you ever stop checking yourself for symptoms?